Hey there, Fantasy Universe. This is Razzball Radio on the Fantasy Sports Network. I'm your host, Nick Capozzi. And typically on Wednesdays, I'm joined by Seth the Sportsman, but he just had some successful back surgery. So, all joking aside, good for you, Seth. But it is a pleasure to be joined by the man who is never a fill in on this show. He's just the regular that moves around. Because he's sketchy. I'm just kidding. Rob Langevin, a.k.a. Smokey. What's up, Smoke?
Yeah, hey Nick, what's going on, buddy?
Well, actually, I don't know if you know this. There's some big news happening at Razzball.
Huge.
Huge. So, if you don't like soccer, that's okay. We'll talk about this for 30 seconds. But if you do, Razzball.com just launched Fantasy Soccer, headed by my man Rob Langevin and Ralphie Boy from Razzball. That's exciting. People actually pay attention to this on this side of the pond?
Oh, tons do, Nick. It's more popular than fantasy baseball.
No, it's not. Globally.
Globally, yes.
Yeah, okay.
It's more popular than basketball and hockey in the States. Combined.
No. Are
Yep.
you serious?
Yep.
Well, that's useless information. No, just kidding. All right. So, yeah, so if you're into that kind of stuff, you guys, I was already warned. They're not even talking about Major League Soccer, only the English Premier League, correct?
Only the football that matters. When they play it right, it's played in England.
So, you said only the football that matters, so only the NFL? All right,
No,
I'm kidding.
The other football.
All right, so go to Razzball.com, look for the little icon with the little soccer ball. It's the one that doesn't look like a football, people. That's all you need to know. All right, just joking. No, it's good, great stuff over there. I've actually read a few articles. I'm not a soccer guy, but if you are, you get into it. But let's talk the real football. I can't really call it the original football. The oblong-shaped ball played on the gridiron. How about that?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
All right, so we talked at length yesterday about C.J. Spiller's broken collarbone as well. Fred Jackson going to miss 3 to 4 weeks. The good news is he doesn't need surgery. Bad news is you're trying to sort through the mess of who's actually going to get the touches there. Is it Bryce Brown or is it Dixon? Now, WGR 550 in Buffalo, great radio station up there. Used to listen to them all the time in Toronto. They're saying they expect Dixon to be the lead dog, and that makes sense to me because he's the guy who's been active. He's the guy who's, when they've needed someone to get touches, has been getting the touches. But I said one thing this morning. I was on, or yesterday morning, I was on SiriusXM Fantasy with Nando DeFino, Roto Experts in the morning, Fantasy Funhouse. And I said, if I was going to spend my fab and I was 2-5, and I was looking for a home run, they're safer guys. But if I'm looking for a home run, Bryce Brown could be a home run. What do you think? How do you think that whole situation is going to sort itself out?
Yeah, I agree with you completely that Bryce Brown is the home run hitter here. You know, the only reason he hasn't been active is because he doesn't play special teams. So that's a knock against him.
True.
You know, the GM in Buffalo, they spent a 4th-round pick, which is pretty unprecedented for a running back.
Yeah.
The people in Philadelphia loved him. Some of them hate him. They said he's a great football player, but an even better fumbler. So I think the situation in Buffalo is going to play out like this. I think they're probably going to split carries, and then the first one to mess up loses.
Yeah, and just to clarify, because I'm not sure if the viewers caught what we were saying there. What I'm saying, if you're looking for a home run, this was on the waiver wire. If you were looking at Trey Mason and Denard Robinson and all these guys, Robinson's probably the guy I want because he's the one with the starting position. But if there's a guy who could come out of nowhere and give you 2-3 150-yard games and a touchdown or two, it'd be Bryce Brown. I don't think it's going to happen, but if there's a guy this week that we're not talking about, could be him. Could be him. What do you do if you're a Fred Jackson owner right now? You're going to hold because he's not going to be back till the fantasy playoffs.
Yeah, you're definitely holding here. The way the running back carousel is working right now in the NFL, I mean, anybody has a warm fantasy pulse, you're probably going to want to keep on your bench right now because there's guys every week that come up and then go down and then come up and go down.
Yeah.
And the wide receiver rankings are the same way. There's guys that are probably not even rosterable now that 3 weeks ago that you were like, oh my God, this guy's the new, whatever.
Well, Trey Mason. Everyone's getting buzzy about Trey Mason.
Yeah, I love Trey Mason. I think Trey Mason is the number one ad over Denard or Bryce Brown this week.
Here's why I disagree, and I've said this a couple times, so I apologize. Seattle, St. Louis, rewatch the whole game. The only time Mason looked good was when there was a gaping hole, when St. Louis just tore through the line. He couldn't do anything on his own. That's my only concern, and I watched every snap. So I'm just saying, I like Mason. What else you got? Cunningham there. Yeah, Stacy's not going to not get carries. Just did a double negative, but and this is a guy who was a third rounder. Anyway, look, we talked about all this yesterday. You can go back, check it out, razzballradio.com. You can also find us on Stitcher. And, of course, Fantasy Sports Network. All right, let's get to some serious business here. Serious because if you spent a first-round pick on Jimmy Graham, you're not a happy camper right now. I made the mistake, and I shouldn't have done this, but I did. In a couple leagues where I didn't have the bench spot and they didn't want to drop somebody else, I started Jimmy Graham. He had no catches and 2 targets. Please tell me it's not going to happen again this week.
You know, he played 30 snaps, got 2 targets last week. He was basically like, the dunking decoy, basically, is what he was. Until he's able to actually absorb contact and actually take a hit, I don't think that he's going to be anywhere near the fantasy Jimmy Graham that we need or want on our fantasy rosters. New Orleans needs him right now. Pierre Thomas is now out for 2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah.
They got Tavares Cadet coming into the PT role in the back, the receiving back. Ingram's coming back. Graham solidifies that offense better than anybody on that entire offensive team, even including Drew Brees, because Graham draws so much attention from other players that everybody else basically feeds off of him. He's like the mother bee.
Also, don't get excited about Cadet because that's another thing I heard today is, hey, what about Cadet? He's going to take over that PT role. They got a lot of pass catchers there. And I don't think what PT does is because he's talented and he's versatile. So it's not that I don't like Cadet long-term potentially, but if you're looking at backfield, look elsewhere. Because you got Kenny Stills there. You got Brandon Cooks there. Marcus Colson took a step forward, Jimmy Graham. So I'm just saying, don't get too crazy about Travis Cadet. Here's what I'm crazy about. Us going to break. We're going to do, I don't want to take a break. I want to stay here with you guys. That's what I want to do. He is Rob Langevin, a.k.a. Smokey. You can follow him on Twitter at Smokey _Loogie, Loogy. That's because he's our loogie out of the pen. Actually, Rob, that makes sense. It's not that you're ever pinch hitting for someone. You're the loogie. When we need someone, when there's a fire, it's all on fire. Who do we call? We call Rob Langevin, Smokey out of the pen.
Call me. You call me.
That's how we do it, baby. All right, I'm Nick Capozzi. You can follow me on Twitter at Nick Capozzi, NickCapozzi. This is Razzball Radio. This is the Fantasy Sports Network. And this is us going to commercial. Welcome back, Razzball Radio, Fantasy Sports Network. Nick Capozzi, Rob Langevin, a.k.a. Smokey. Now, the soccer guru over at Razzball.com. Okay, we talked about the Buffalo running back situation. We talked about Jimmy Graham. Let's talk now about someone who's not getting talked about, RG3. And here's what I think is interesting in this scenario. I was interested in Kirk Cousins. I was disappointed in Kirk Cousins a few weeks later. McCoy's coming in now. I'm not buying that. I know they're saying they might roll with McCoy this week. I don't know if RG3's back this week. But I will say this. RG3 is available in a boatload of leagues. And if we were having this conversation off the air, boat is not what I would have put there. Because he is so widely available. And look, if you're rolling, I heard a guy today on the radio rolling with Mike Glennon as your quarterback. I mean, you got to get yourself some RG3, don't you?
I mean, just based on his potential. I mean, he's basically, if he's on your waiver wire and there's guys like Mike Glennon and Derek Carr, and I mean, RG3's still got to have some appeal there. That the Washington offense isn't a bunch of just Herman Munsters, and they still have Garcon, they still got Deshaun Jackson. I mean, personally, I think it's just a big. If RG3 can talk his way into the lineup, I think he'll be there. I honestly think McCoy's going to get the start this week. Then they're going to go into their, they're going to figure out what's what, and then Washington has their bye, and then I think you see RG3 come back. I don't think he's going to be able to talk himself into the lineup yet, but anything's possible in Washington because, they're Washington.
Yeah. All right, let me throw something else out there at you. 13% owned former University of Texas standout Johnny Football. Brian Hoyer has been terrible last couple weeks. And here's what's interesting. I actually went through these numbers today. Cleveland's pass defense has been exceptional. The run defense has not been good. But overall, it's a good defensive unit. They're getting killed in time of possession. They're in the bottom third of the league. Actually, I think they're actually the bottom quarter of the league in terms of time of possession. But you got good defense. You got good skilled offensive players there. You got a decent three-pronged running attack. What they're missing on what could be a playoff team is that spark plug. Johnny Football. Now, I didn't come into the season being a Johnny Football guy. Okay, just so we're clear. But this guy's available more than RG3 is.
Mm-hmm.
And if he comes in, because there was talk he may have gone in last week. If he comes in and kind of plugs and plays here for the Browns, do you think he could be really good this year? Because I think kind of everything is in place. Now, I don't know if he's going to be a good player. Just so I'm not telling you to sell your farm for Johnny Football, but I'm asking the question here because, again, some people are rolling with Mike Glennon.
I don't see him being a must start every week. Would he be a guy that you could probably rely on if he gets the call in the next 2 weeks that you could rely on as maybe like a bye week guy? Because the bye week's coming up right now, 9, 10, 11, 12. There's a lot of great fantasy quarterbacks that are on bye those weeks. And if he gets the call, I mean, I don't see him putting up huge, ginormous numbers, but he is Johnny Football, and that the allure of him actually doing something is probably more there than him actually not doing anything.
Yeah. If you got a bench spot, though, and you need a quarterback, go grab either RG3 or Manziel, preferably RG3 if you're trying to win right now. But I'm just saying, if RG3 is gone in your league, grab Manziel because if he does get into a game, you want to talk about hype. It's a guy you could even flip if you haven't passed your trade deadline yet, and that's usually mid-November, so you got a couple weeks there. Okay, let's go to Cincinnati, where apparently, here's what happens. A.J. Green gets turf toe, and what happens is there's a huge chasm that just opens up and rips apart the city of Cincinnati and just engulfs everything, including that football team. You can't tell me that A.J. Green plays defense on that team. What is wrong with the Bengals? And is A.J. Green even going to matter to them as a football team? Obviously, you want him back for fantasy purposes, but what's going on there?
I think it's beyond A.J. Green. I mean, the wide receiver depth there is just nothing. I mean, Brandon Tate is not a usable fantasy option.
Well, they're short their two best wide receivers in Jones and in the best case scenario, Sanu's your third wide receiver.
Oh, absolutely. But you can't rely on Sanu constantly. I mean, look at the game. I don't know if you watched any of the game on Sunday. I mean, they didn't get a first down until 5 minutes left in the first half. I mean, they have Giovanni Bernard. You can hand it off to him 3 times in a row, and he should be making a first down. It goes way beyond A.J. Green here. There's offensive line problems. Their defense has just basically gone on vacation in the last 4 weeks. When they came into the season, they were basically a hyped, top 8 defense.
Where'd they go on vacation?
Punta Cana.
All right. Jake Locker, do we care? I mean, we talked about some quarterbacks that are out there. Do we care what his injury status is? I mean, fill us in anyway, but.
Yeah, I mean, we care because he's got usable options there. We want to see him get better and actually do something fantasy-wise because a lot of us are sitting on Kendall Wright. Some of us may still be sitting on Justin Hunter. Some of us may even be sitting on Bishop Sankey, wanting him to actually do something in an offense run by an actual quarterback instead of a clipboard holder.
Bring in Mettenberger. All right, what's the ETA here for Locker? Is he playing this week?
I think he does. I think he plays this week. He probably ends up getting hurt in the game, but he probably plays.
All right. Let's talk about Trent Richardson. He of the bum hamstring. It's kind of disappointing because he was against Cincinnati before this chasm opened up and sucked in all the stadiums in downtown Cincinnati. Trent Richardson was actually playing pretty good in that game. And slowly but surely, he's quietly putting together a not too bad little year. Okay? Hopefully he's not out too long. What I had heard recently was that it's minor. But you tell me, Smokey, you're more plugged in. You're more plugged in than I am.
I mean, he was going for an MRI, and they went. It is a slight hamstring problem. I just, I want to believe in the Trent Richardson train, and him showing signs like this doesn't sway me from not wanting to believe in him. But when the Indianapolis Colts offense runs like they do, Bradshaw is the guy that you want in there, and Bradshaw's the guy who's been doing it. He leads all NFL running backs in scoring and receiving touchdowns. I just don't see Richardson. I want to believe in it, but I can't.
All right, fine, whatever. He's a troublemaker. Bradshaw's going to get hurt. So is DeMarco Murray, get Joseph Randle. Okay. We kind of got to save the rest for after the break, Rob. So why don't you just use your pretty blue eyes and, that's actually kind of weird looking. Hey, real quick, Jadeveon Clowney could be back as soon as this week, which is good if you got the Houston defense. Sure, we don't really cover IDP here because I don't play IDP. Everyone's the same except for J.J. Watt. Oh, I'm in trouble now. I just
Wait,
can't.
no love for Paul Puslesny. He's out for the season with a torn pec. If we're going IDP.
Arakpo too, eh? Bad news.
Yeah.
All right, listen, we got more, offensive skill position players to talk about right after this. Razzball Radio, Fantasy Sports Network. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. Where are you gonna go? Get the sandwich later. Nick Capozzi back here with Rob Langevin. This is Razzball Radio. This is the Fantasy Sports Network. This is Wednesday, so we're talking about this stuff, which is this injury news. Okay, repeated myself a little bit there. I saved this one to start a segment because, he was the guy going 6th overall in drafts. I saw him as high as number 2 overall in some of the drafts we did on the tour. The big guy, Calvin Johnson. What is happening there with Mr. CJ?
He's got an ankle sprain. The good news is he actually traveled to London, so his ankle's got to be pretty, almost close to playing, because they wouldn't risk him flying on a plane with the oxygen deprivation that's on an airplane, flying across the pond to go to London.
Would you become a doctor?
Yeah, absolutely. I can use big words. I can pontificate.
All right. So what do you think the ETA is here?
I think they're going to try him out in the beginning of this game. He's 50-50 for this game at best. I think he definitely plays the game after this for sure.
All right, listen, I don't know if I'm believing that. And even when he does come back, it might be sluggish for a little while. But this is a really key point. Pay attention. Are you paying attention? Get a pen. You got it? Write this down. 9:30 Eastern. That's what time the Detroit game kicks off in London this week. Never seen that before. So if you have a league that locks their rosters at a certain time, or if you're playing daily fantasy, make sure you're ready for those 9:30 a.m. Eastern games. It's like the East Coasters going to be watching on the West Coast for once.
Yeah, pretty much.
Flip it in. I flip it for real. All right. And a lot of people are going to miss that. It's going to get ugly. Okay, let's continue the conversation here. Kind of a silly show today. We got hardcore information still to come. You talked a little bit about Trey Mason earlier. Make your case why you think he might be the running back to own rest of the season if you are in the St. Louis Ram running back market.
Like you brought up before, he basically only had running room when the hole was there against Seattle. But if you go back to the game before that, he had limited carries and basically ran for like almost 7 yards a carry. And he's facing the Chiefs this week, who are letting up 117 yards per game. They're lower mid-table. I just see him actually taking this momentum and running with it. I've been reading the Rams inside guys, and they really seem to think that Mason has the right attitude and the right system going for him right now to actually be a contributing factor for that offense.
Yeah, I think that's a possibility. And what I was saying earlier, listen, I'm not talking down Trey Mason, I promise you. In fact, in the preseason, I like Trey Mason a lot. A couple expert leagues, I got stuck with Zach Stacy because he fell so late. Man, I hate that. But I handcuffed with Trey Mason till I dropped him week 2. So I do like Mason, SEC Player of the Year. You can't argue with that. But nonetheless, I need to see more. And unfortunately, when you're spending your waiver and your fab, you got to spend when you got to spend. What do you think to Denard Robinson? I know we talked about it briefly earlier, but Denard Robinson, Gerhardt's not coming back. He might be situational, like the situation being that the season is over, so they'll put him in there or something. I look at Robinson, and he looks like a wide receiver running out of the backfield. And that's my concern. I just don't think he can. I think maybe if he was a 10 or 12 touch guy, he could be interesting. Kind of a flex play maybe, but I don't know if I'm buying this with him as the main running back.
Yeah, you brought it up exactly how I was going to say it. He's built like a wide receiver. His body type isn't much similar to Jamal Charles.
I was going to say you.
Well, I'm awesome. That's all. But the problem is he's a little guy, but he's a quantity runner. He needs a lot of carries in order to get to where he's going to be for fantasy relevant. To be rosterable. He plays Miami. They're a top 10 running team. They're a top 10 bad running team. Let's put it that way. They're going to see what actually Robinson is all about this week. If he's actually anything, we're going to see it. If he's not, Miami's probably going to swallow him up.
All right, so a couple teams that are probably wondering what's going on with their season right now. A, the Seahawks. B, probably the Bears at 3-4. It's
Hmm.
a bit of a strange situation, and now everyone's calling out, or Jay Cutler's been called out by multiple teammates. What happened there?
Well, to quote Brandon Marshall, we're 3-4. It's unacceptable. If he said that 41 times in an interview, 41 times. It's
He did?
crazy.
Did he really?
Yeah,
What did he
he
say?
kept saying it. It was a lot. It was a lot. It was crazy.
He kept saying
But
unacceptable, or 3 and 4 is unacceptable.
3-4, it's unacceptable.
Wow, I missed that.
He, he's a man of many words. You know, if you're gonna look at the Bears, I mean, you can't just blame the offense. I mean, I looked it up. I looked it up today. Cutler is in the top 10 basically in every quarterback stat: yards per
Yeah,
game,
he's been great.
touchdowns. You know, he's 14-10 touchdown to interception rate. I think if you're going to blame anything for the Bears actually being squadouche right now, look at their defense. Their defense just is horrible. They're giving up 25 points per game, 250 yards passing per game. I know their defense is decimated in their secondary by injury. You know, Peanut Tillman went out. Corey Fuller's now out. If you're going to lay blame there, I mean, the defense is just awful. And when you think of the Bears, what's the first thing you think of besides Ditka?
Defense.
Thank you.
I'm with you. Who would have thought that this year well, okay, let's go back a year. Not because in the preseason you might have guessed that Chicago's defense wasn't going to be very good, but who thought Detroit would have the great defense and Chicago would have this awful defense?
It's crazy to think about. I mean, but Detroit has the pass rush to basically envelop their secondary, you know, concerns. So you could see it, but maybe you didn't touch on it. You know, that's all.
All right, real quick, I got about 30 seconds here. What do you think is going to happen with Percy Harvin with the Jets?
I think he's going to be manipulated better in that system because Seattle used him more as a gadget player, and I think the Jets will probably use that plus use him as a dump down for Geno Smith. Geno is not the kind of runner that Wilson is. Wilson basically takes over plays and makes them his own, whereas Geno Smith needs someone else to help him make a play.
Hence Jason Morrow being his key target the last couple of weeks. I mean, look, I think there's opportunity there because I think you're right. That's exactly what they need. I mean, you know, Chris Ivory, Chris Johnson have not been the pass catchers out of the backfield. Not that you necessarily expected, but you know, he's always looking. You know, they're double covering Decker, triple covering Decker because he's the only option there. Imagine if they didn't have Decker, and then they go and give Curley a 4-year, $16 million contract extension. It's football, so it's not real numbers, but still, that was a bit weird. All right, Rob, we got to get out of here. Rob Langevin, a.k.a. Smokey, Smokey the Loogie on Twitter. I'm Nick Capozzi. This is Razzball Radio, Fantasy Sports Network. We'll be back tomorrow with more good fantasy goodness. It'll be good. See you tomorrow.